Today, let's crunch the numbers on some power. Now, you're probably like, wow, that's pretty easy to figure out. I could have figured this one out myself. Well, there's actually some things about power that you may not have figured out, and this video is going to cover all those. We're going to cover the max power, we're going to cover the minimum power, and we're going to find you that right threshold when it comes to power and how far you hit your clubs. There's also some tricks and tweaks that you can do to save yourself a bunch of points, and those are going to become very valuable because contact is a point system for the attribute that you do not want to miss out on. And anything you can save regarding power, you want to be saving that so that way you can put it into contact. I hope you guys are enjoying the battle series. Obviously, episode 1 is out, Swing Path. We saw some drastic differences. I gave you a threshold there. We're going to eventually, in time, go through every single one of these so that way when you respec, you know exactly where to go. Let's dive on in. As always, all I ask in return, a little like, a little subscribe, share the video around to other people who you want to help out. We'll cover this very quickly, and obviously this is probably some basic information that you probably have figured out yourself, but let's just cover it. Power, obviously how far you can hit it. One of the things I'm going to focus on a lot here is driver. Obviously, I understand that in between certain thresholds, there are increases in the other clubs. Now, that can help for gapping, and it probably, if you do need, you have a big gap between like your pitching wedge and your 9-iron or your pitching wedge and your 50-degree wedge, that can help in meeting those standards. But when it comes down to power, power is all about driver, because the farther you drive the ball, the less you need all of those other clubs, and that is why this is so important. When it comes down to driving abilities, the max you can get to is a 99, so it doesn't matter if you have fittings on top of it, it doesn't matter if it's the attribute system. The max you can get to is a 99, and then 297 yards is the max distance of the driver that you can hit. The only way outside of carrying the ball further than the 297 is to use your power drive, which would be, your shot T skill here down on the bottom, or golf balls. And if you haven't seen that video, go watch that video. I explain the differences of the 3 golf balls and how one of them actually gives you increased driver distance. So you can go check that video out as well. So 99 is a 297 yard driver. And then the lowest level is a 42, which is your technician build. So you can see here, this is the technician build, and this is a 42 overall, 265 yard carry. So a whopping 32 yard difference is massive, because that's the difference between, hitting 5 irons into greens and hitting 8 irons into greens, which at the higher levels is going to be massive. And then obviously we'll just cover like a threshold as well. So 70 overall gets you 283, 284 yards if you're at 71. So we'll say 71. That would give you the increase of, about just under 20 yards there for you as well. So here is a chart for you and some things you need to know. And like I said, I'm focusing primarily on driver distance. Why am I focusing on driver distance? Once again, it's because it matters the most and comes into hitting what clubs you're hitting into greens. This is a chart. Anywhere that you see a number that has a green box around it, you get an increased driver ability. You can see early on it follows a pattern of get a point, which is like get a yard, skip, get 2 yards, the next 2, skip, get 2. It goes 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. When you get to the higher numbers, it goes pretty much get a point, skip, get a point, skip, get a point, skip. But there is a nice threshold here in the actual pattern when it comes to the 81 to 82 overall range for power. Same thing when it comes to 70 and 71. So those are spots in which it only takes one more attribute point, which when it comes down to contact will probably be minimal for 1 point, that you can gain an extra yard of carry. Now, why is that important? Because there's probably a lot of people out there who have built their builds and they went to say the 83 or the 84 spot. Now that works if you needed the gapping between the irons and you needed the increase in the irons, because if anywhere in the white spots that usually increases the rest of the clubs to catch back up to them. So that's pretty much like how this graph works. But I should emphasize that you should really only focus on driver distance when it comes down to equipping power. And when it comes down to the 83-84 range, you're essentially wasting 2 attributes there, potentially 3 if you went too far, and you're going on down and risking it at your contact's expense. So you definitely need to find this threshold of what works for you and pinpoint this out. Now let's talk about fittings and how fittings can play into a part here as well. Well, you can actually cheat more attributes as well here in the fitting aspect, right? For example, if I wanted to get to 297 power, I have 3 fittings on my sculptor build right now. 3, and they all are +3, +3, +3. So that's the equivalent of +9. Or +9 on 89 gets me all the way up to a 98. So I don't even need to get to a 99 overall, because the 98 mark is the threshold for your driver. So all the people who are trying to get their spot so that they can apply 20 fittings and get to a 99. So for example, I'm trying to get my driver to a 79, and then I'm going to apply 4 fittings on top of that, which is going to be +20. So that way I can get to a 99. Well, in reality, you wasted an attribute point right then and there. You actually only need a 78. A 78 plus the 20 fittings would get you all the way up to the 297 yard driver that you're looking for. So there is a threshold there that you need to pay attention to. Use that graph that I just showed to find where the top point is for driver distance. You cannot go beyond that when it comes to the attribute points, and it is consistent throughout, right? So it doesn't matter what build I was using, those numbers are when an attribute point gets added. When it comes down to your fittings, your fittings get you to that point, but there are ways, like I said, around it. Now, one of the builds that has been piquing my interest, and more that I keep on building my way towards this, is the pro golfer here that has the sculptor build, right? So I think 294 yards is a perfect threshold where I don't think you're going to be, even if you want to get to 293 yards instead, so like 293 yards, 294 yards, I think that is a really good driver distance. You're going to be pretty much far ahead of all those people who are pretty much maxing out technician builds, unless they're maxing all of their fittings onto it. And they could be doing that. But on top of this, you're not too far behind the actual, leaders in the clubhouse when it comes down to it. Now, would I apply all of my points here to 89? No, I wouldn't. I would go all the way down to an 81, and then I would use 8 fittings to get me up to that 89 mark that I was looking for. And that way you can still have a 75 contact, and that will leave you 3 more spots that you can prioritize for your driver on contact and swing path and getting those numbers up. Because if you were maxing out this build here, that would be 8 to swing path, which would get you up to 81, and then contact, you'd throw 1 in there, and then that would get it up to 79. So that's a really good threshold that you can play there. I still think Magician is hands down the best build because it is a really good jack of all trades. And when it comes to driver, you just can apply more fittings to get you to that spot. But I think when it comes down to it, play around with your build, but you really want to find a combination of fittings to power to get you to the 293, 294 yard driver threshold. That will make sure that you are right up there with the longest hitters of the powerhouse, and you are farther in advance of all the greenskeepers and the technician builds that are out there, because those are some of the primary ones. So my Magician build has 294 yards of driver. I have 5 fittings on that. That is my primary use. But in the future, I'm going to eventually retweak that. I'm going to drop it a little bit so that way I can get 2 attribute points back. So some things like that. Find the threshold when it comes to power. Use the chart that I showed you so that way you can make sure you're not wasting attributes on other clubs like your irons, because those are going to make marginal difference as compared to a driver. I hope you enjoyed. Do not forget to like. Do not forget to subscribe. We'll see you in another.